Jim Roselle had an opportunity to interview former welterweight and middleweight champion of the world, Carmen Basilio. In the audience during that interview, and to Jim's right, is Dr. Homer Servoss, noted physician and noted fight fan. And you'll hear his voice throughout the interview that occurred that day. Carmen Basilio was born April 2nd, 1927 in Canastota, New York. The 5', 6.5" fighter would fight from 1948 through 1961, during which time he would have 79 total bouts. On June 10th, 1955, Carmen Basilio won the world welterweight title by defeating Tony DeMarco in Syracuse, New York. He would retain the title until 1956 when he lost to Johnny Saxton, and then he won it back later that year. Finally, he relinquished the title so that he could take on Sugar Ray Robinson for the World Middleweight Championship. Basilio fought Sugar Ray Robinson in New York City for the World Middleweight title on September 23rd, 1957. Here you see Basilio, the welterweight champion at the time, who had given up his title for this fight, connecting with a smashing right to Robinson's jaw in the 10th round of this middleweight championship bout. Here we see Carmen acting as a leaning post for the tired Sugar Ray Robinson. Basilio, always a tenacious little man, traded punches, skill, and determination with Sugar Ray Robinson, who was one of the greatest big man middleweights. And at the end of 15 rounds, Carmen Basilio was the new middleweight champion of the world. On March 25th, 1958, in Chicago, Sugar Ray Robinson and Carmen Basilio met in a rematch. And here are the highlights.
"15 rounds for the middleweight championship of the world. Before a sellout crowd of close to 20,000 fans in Chicago Stadium, Carmen Basilio defends his crown for the first time. Sugar Ray Robinson seeking to regain the crown he lost 6 months before, attempting to win the world title for the 5th time. Fierce momentum has them punching after the bell. Just look at that bulging left eye of Carmen Basilio's. By now, he's really in trouble. For the past 4 rounds, Robinson has been content to pace himself for a long fight. Meanwhile, Basilio, with one eye, is putting up one of the gamest fights of his career. It's amazing the way this smaller man is going after Robinson. Round 10, and both fighters are giving it all they got. The pace is still fast for this late in the fight, and what a match this is. Robinson, the master boxer. Basilio, a guy who's all heart. Watch for the terrific close-ups of that all-important eye. Watch the referee on the break. Touch gloves for the last round. Two marvelous fighters in a tremendously exciting match, calling up every ounce of strength. Robinson looks at the clock. He's tired too.
The winner and the new world's middleweight champion, Sugar Ray Robinson.
Sugar Ray Robinson received the unanimous decision of the judges and won the middleweight championship for the 5th time, a record performance that is not ever likely to be repeated. As for the guest, with Jim Roselle, the story of the return match was told by looking at Carmen Basilio's tightly closed left eye. From the 6th round on, Basilio was at a disadvantage. Only his courage made the bout close. Here's a wonderful opportunity to enjoy an interview among Dr. Homer Servoss, Jim Roselle, Russ Diethrick, and Carmen Basilio.
I'm sorry. That I stand corrected. That's Willie Pep. Willie Pep has it right. Willie Pep says, "I had 6 wives. They're all good housekeepers. They all kept the house."
Have you ever met Sparky before today, Carm?
Yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, yesterday.
Known him for a long time.
Yeah.
No, I just met him.
All right.
But I knew of him and saw him pitch and everything else. And I was always a Yankee fan since I was a little boy, so
Well, that's
I
great.
would have remembered him.
Are we ready then?
Yep.
You held 2 titles, welterweight and middleweight, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jim Roselle,
And I'm Russ Diethrick.
and welcome to the Times of Your Life. Another special opportunity on this broadcast to bring to your attention and to our microphone a gentleman who held 2 titles in the world of boxing many years ago, the welterweight title, the middleweight title, who provided millions of fans with thrills with some of the most thrilling fights in the history of boxing. In fact, in 1957, one of those fights was so thrilling that Ring magazine called it the fight of the year. It was Carmen Basilio against Sugar Ray Robinson. But even before I go and say hello to Carmen Basilio, the Canastota Clouder, I've got to say we have a special moment on this broadcast to say hello to one of the greatest boxing fans the city's ever known. And We've always enjoyed swapping stories with him, Dr. Homer Servoss. Dr.
Yeah.
Servoss, it's good to have you here with Carmen Basilio
Well,
today.
God bless you. I'm glad to be here, and I was there when he fought Robinson, and Robinson tried every way he could to knock this guy out. He couldn't, and he was swinging with both hands, really trying.
Where did your interest in boxing come from, Doc Servoss?
Well, I used to box when I was a kid, and my mother said, "You're never going to get any place doing that. You better go to school and amount to something." So,
Which you certainly did, yes. Well, we're delighted to have you here as an audience to have you meet Carmen Basilio and be with us while we have this opportunity to visit him.
Yes, okay.
Besides watching Carmen Basilio, what other fighters did you see in your time?
Oh, a lot of them. I used to go to a lot of boxing bouts, for all the heavyweight fighters and stuff. Yeah, I like to go and watch them box.
How about Joe Louis?
I saw Lewis fight. Yeah. He was great.
Rocky Marciano?
Oh, terrific.
You've seen all these big fighters.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and wonderful memories. The Canastota Clouder, ladies and gentlemen, Carmen Basilio. Good to have you in town, Carmen.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Or as we say, buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
Yeah.
Buon mezzogiorno.
That's half a day. Okay. Carm, we're
Well, afternoon. Really.
Yes.
Right.
well, Russ, you're delighted to meet a former champion in the world of boxing.
Oh, I sure am. It's a thrill to be sitting here next to him. I can remember going to the Tessel Kemp Abraham dinner and seeing him on the dais, but sitting right next to him here with a microphone is a thrill of a lifetime.
Carmen Basilio, you're one of 4 boys. You had 6 sisters, a family of 10. Your dad said he came home so many times, found you guys fighting often. He decided to buy a pair of boxing gloves. Is that a true story?
Well, my father was a fight night to begin with. He had a rule with us when we were kids that we had to be in bed by 8:30 every night, except Friday night. Now, this was before television, was radio, and he knew all the fighters, and he never missed listening to the fights on Friday night, which came on at 10 o'clock. So he let my brothers and I stay up to listen to the fights with him. So we knew who all the fighters were, and he bought us boxing gloves, and I was the middle one of the three boys. There was 4 of us, but my brother Joey was 10 years younger than us. So my older brother, 2 years older. My brother Paul was 2 years younger. I'm the middle one, so I boxed both of them all the time, and I had a bad temper. When they hit me, I wanted to kill. So they say he's the tough one. He's the fighter. Well, you mentioned the name Mike Tornator today.
Yes.
When we were kids in school, we had a high school boxing team, but we were too young to box on a high school team, and Mike used to take all us little kids and pair us up according to our size, and we would box the night of the high school boxing team before, which they called the preliminary. We boxed one of our buddies or something, and the thrill of it was to get in to see the high school team. It cost $0.25 to get in, and who the hell had $0.25? That was it, see? So this is, it covered 2 things. To get out there and do what we wanted to do, box what we loved, and to see our high school buddies box.
Carm, if I may get a bit personal here, you mentioned how tough 25 cents was in that time period. What was the biggest check you got from a boxing match?
The first Sugar Ray Robinson fight in Yankee Stadium, $236,000. Chicken feed compared to today. But it was a lot of money.
Just Sparky
then.
Lyle's 90,000 don't compare it to today.
It was a lot of money then. I never thought I'd ever see the day that I'd make that kind of money, because early in my career I had my ups and downs. I broke my hand. I got set back a year and a half when I had mono. That made me, well, I fought 5 or 6 fights with mono. Didn't know I had it because I was too dumb. I didn't know enough to go to a doctor. You know, all of it.
That's why we brought Doc Servoss here today.
That's good. We need him. So,
Get a little weak.
you know, it's funny how that hit you. I woke up one morning, the day before I went out and I ran 4 miles in the breeze, went to the gym and had a great workout. Woke up the next morning to do road work, and I had trouble running 2 miles. And I go to the gym, and after 5 rounds, I could hardly lift my arms. But I didn't say anything to my managers about it, and I just kept going like that. And something was missing, but I didn't know. And I fought 4 or 5 fights with it till I fought in New Orleans. And after the fight, I broke out in hives, and the glands under my arms got like little golf balls. And then I went to my doctor, and he said, "Oh, you've got mono." He says, "You're going to be off for a couple of years with this." So I was off 6 months, and I'm working for the Autolite company, and I look back and I see my boss looking at me. I said, "What the hell am I going to do? Spend the rest of my life with him looking at me?" So I said, "I'm going to make a comeback." And I wasn't completely cured of mono, but I was better, and I started working out, and I didn't have managers then. I broke up with the managers that I had, and I wasn't going any place with them. So I booked a fight of my own down in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and fought a guy named Emmett K.O. Norris. And went out there that first round, boy, he kicked the hell out of me. And I says, "Oh boy," I says, "tonight's going to be the first time in my life I ever got knocked out." This was in the first round. Well, in the second round, I hit him a left hook in the solar plexus, and he was thrown up in the corner at the end of the round. And I took all the fight out of him, and I won a 10-round decision, but I struggled. But from then on, I started to improve, and then mono started to leave me. This is 1952. And by September, well, I fought Chuck Davey, who was undefeated, and I beat him. But they wanted to keep him undefeated, so there was a lot of complaints that I won the fight. And 5 days after the fight, the Boxing Commission had a meeting and said they found a mistake in the referee's scorecard. They couldn't find it the night of the fight, but they found it 5 days later. They reversed the decision to a draw. But in the long run, they did me a favor, because now I got a return match with Chuck Davey, and this was my first television fight in Chicago Stadium, and he was well protected there. Jim Norris promoting the fights, and he was under, real close friends with Jim Norris. Well, anyway, I thought I kicked the hell out of him. I sent him to the hospital. They had to put 34 stitches in the cuts in his cheeks and eyebrows, but they gave him the decision. But I fixed him up pretty good. He made a date with the nurse, and he married her, and he got 10 kids.
Thanks to your 34 stitches.
Yeah, so last year I was in Detroit to speak at the downtown Detroit Athletic Club, and Chuck has something to do to get me there, because we're friends now, And I says, "I fixed your butt," So he said, "That's right," but he's doing very well. He's in insurance. He has the insurance business and the real estate business. He's got his kids working for him and everything. So,
well, Carm, you're really doing us a wonderful favor by bringing us up to date. These are wonderful behind-the-scenes stories. Russ?
I just wanted you to talk about that big purse you had with Robinson. How about the first purse that you had? Do you remember that professionally?
First pro fight was in Binghamton, New York. I got $50, and I got 35 of that. My manager got 15.
Carm,
you're going back a ways.
Carm, there's a story I had read about you, an opportunity for a trainer to come in, a fight manager, to come in and take care of you during one fight. That was Angelo Dundee, and after he worked with you, you wanted him to be your manager, or he wanted to be your manager.
Well, here was the story on that. Excuse me. Angelo's brother, Chris, was a promoter down in Miami Beach, and I signed a contract to fight a guy named Baby Williams, a Cuban kid, down there in Miami Beach. This was in September of 1952. And Angelo and Chris managed Baby Williams, but I go down there to fight him, and Angelo, they were too cheap to buy airplane tickets for my two managers to go down, so I go down alone. Angelo meets me at the airport and introduces himself. He says, "I'm going to work in your corner with you." So he works in my corner, and I wound up at a war with Baby Williams, but I wound up winning the fight, and I got cut that night. Well, Angelo took good care of it, and I like the way he stopped the bleeding and everything. My managers, we were too close, and they were too nervous before a fight and during a fight, and they couldn't handle the cut, so I insisted that we hire Angelo Dundee to work in our corner, and just for one thing, not to train me, not to advise me in the event of a cut. So they did it, but they didn't like the idea because they had to cut into their payday too, see? But Angelo was with me, and I always remind Angelo, I always tell him, Angelo, I made you famous before any of those other guys did.
Carmen Basilio, former welterweight, middleweight champion of the world. When you stop and think of the fights and the thrills he gave fans, and we do want to go and mention other great names in the world of boxing. Kid Gavilan.
Kid Gavilan was very, very clever, very quick. I fought him in my first world championship fight, and I think it was September 18th, 1953. And it's funny, I walked in
That was in
ring.
Syracuse, New York,
That was
wasn't
in
it?
Syracuse,
That's
right.
your hometown,
My
Tavan.
hometown, right. But they imported a judge and a referee from New York to protect him. And when I walked in the ring, he looked across the ring at me and sneered at me, you know, trying to scare me, and I just smiled at him. And in the first round was just a feeling out round. The second round, we're in close, and as he backed away, I hit him with a left hook, and it staggered him. He got mad. He's come after me, and he winds up with that bolo punches, and but a lot of people, as I watched films, I knew that when he starts that bolo punch, he leaves his chin wide open, right? So as he started to move in with that bolo punch, I hit him with 2 left hooks on the chin, and he went down. And it was the second time ever in his whole career that he was ever down. Well, any more bolo punches till late in the fight. And I thought I won the fight, but they gave him the decision. But it was all right, because at least the beginning, I was like an 8-1 underdog, and no one gave me a chance to get him. So anyway, I put my stamp in there that I was one of the top contenders. And he says, he punched too hard. I never fight him again, because he had only been on the floor once in his whole career before that. So, and he never gave me another shot at him, and I had to wait 2 years before I got a crack at the title. He went down and he fought Johnny Sack. First he fought Johnny Bratton, and he beat Bratton real bad in Chicago. And then he went down to Philadelphia, and Johnny Saxton upset him and won the title from him. Now I'm the #1 contender, and they're bypassing me, and so they took Tony DeMarco to defend the title against in Boston. It backfired on him. DeMarco, being the vicious puncher that he was, knocked Saxton out in the 14th round. But the boxing commissions that stepped in and said they would permit that fight only if they had agreed to fight me within 90 days. So Tony had the unfortunate luck of knocking the guy out, but he had to fight me within 90 days, and I knocked him out in 12 rounds and won the title. Right? So then I knocked him out in 12 rounds again 6 months later in a return match. Then I fought Johnny Saxton in Chicago. And in the second round, I hit him in the chin, and he was out on his feet. The bell rang, and his handlers took a knife or a razor blade and cut his glove. We came out for the third round, and the stuffing was coming out of his glove. It took 20 minutes to get that new glove on. They had to stop the fight, and he got himself a little rest, and he ran like a deer the rest of the fight. And
Are you saying to me that was a clever piece of strategy to cut the glove?
Those guys would do anything to win, you know. So they cut the glove, and the stuffing come out, and they had to get a new glove on him. And he got the decision and took the welterweight title on me. And I was really disgusted. But anyway, he had to give me a return match 6 months later in Syracuse. And I never stopped training. Right after the fight, I came home, and it was Easter vacation for the kids. So I took my wife and the kids, and we went down to Miami. And I trained in Angelo Dundee's gym every day and got up every morning and did road work. I was determined to get that title back, and as soon as I got back, I went up to my training camp and trained and trained and trained, and we had a rematch in September of '56, and I knocked him out in 9 rounds in Syracuse.
I just wonder, Homer, what is the most exciting fight that you witnessed as a boxing fan?
Well, I saw a lot. I saw Dempsey fight and Tunney and those guys. I went way back to there. But Carmen was a guy that gave you all out. He went all out when he fought guys. And fellas that thought they were going to lick him found out he wasn't as easy as he looked. You know, he was a good, strong puncher and steady. He could stay in there.
He certainly has proved that to us. Just the fact that he took the attitude, if I'm going to win, I'm going to train every day and work hard at it. Carmen Basilio.
Well, not only that, but my feelings were this: when I'd walk in the ring and I'd look at the fans, I'd say, those people paid money to see action, and I'm going to give them action, whether I get hit or not. And they'd say, well, you leave yourself open when you're moving in like that. I says, but I'm going to hit the other guy just as many or more times than he hits me, and the fans are going to see action when I fight.
What a nice attitude. He's there. It's show business, isn't it, Carmen?
Well, hey, that's what they want to see. They came there to get excited, so I want to make them excited.
Let me ask you some questions about the game today. What about the kind of tragedy we've seen with Mike Tyson's life?
Well, that's an unfortunate thing that happened. I don't think he got the real break on that thing. You know, he didn't get the best deal out of that because, hey, that girl went to his room at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, what the hell were her intentions? I disagree with the whole situation. Unfortunately, Mike let her in the room, and so she figured she was going to get a lot of money out of that deal, but that backfired. And poor Mike went to jail for a little while, but...
Who is today, in today's crop, Carmen Basilio, looking at welterweight, middleweight, whatever division, who do you see as one of the greatest fighters today?
Well, tell you the truth, I'm not impressed. I hate to say these things because I hated to hear the old timers say, "Why? Well, if I was fighting today, I'd knock all these bums out." These were guys that never got out of the 6-rounders. But how can you justify these kids being as good as we were when you turn the TV on? Here's a guy with 16 fights fighting for a world championship. They don't have the experience. They're competitive fights because they're fighting another guy with the same amount of experience. But if they were in there with some guys during our time that has 60, 70 pro fights under the belt, guys like Ike Williams, Kid Gavlin, Lou Jenkins, and all those guys, they'd be in a lot of trouble.
When you the toughest fight you ever had, Carmen Basilio, just the toughest fight you had.
With my wife, I never won.
I'm glad I gave you the line, Carmen. Carmen Basilio, former welterweight, middleweight champion of the world. We're fortunate to have film of some of these great fights, Carmen. We all remember Tony Zale and Rocky Graziano. Those were classic fights.
Yes.
What about the heavyweight championship picture? There's always a debate as to who probably was the greatest heavyweight of all time. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, there's always the arguments, and there always will be arguments. Rocky Marciano was a great heavyweight champion, undefeated in 49 fights. But I think Joe Louis overall was the greatest of all of them, from what I've seen. And because when he was in his prime, he was like a machine. Those punches went like pistons, and he had great combinations. Although, not to take anything away from Rocky, Rocky was a great puncher. And the old story is, like I said before, being around at the right time. Rocky was around at the right time, but still, he beat some great fighters. He beat Ezra Charles. He beat Jersey Joe Walcott twice. And those guys...
Where do you put Muhammad Ali?
Well, he's probably number 3 or 4. He was a great fighter. You can't take that away from him. Unfortunately, he's got this Parkinson's disease now, and he has a hard time talking. But
you've survived very well, Carmen Basilio, considering the number of body blows and head blows you took in all your entire life in boxing.
Is that right? I never knew I got there.
When I look at this program in July 1993, 43 years later, what are some of your thoughts about that time?
Well, Billy just died here a year or so ago with cancer. Billy was about 6 years older than me. And he was a great fighter, very smart. I'll tell you what, I fought him 3 times. And he had the greatest chin in the world. I hit him with shots and knocked other guys dead. And all he'd do is look at me and say, "I'm coming now." And it came. Billy had a good chin. And the unfortunate thing, he was a powder puff puncher. You could take chances with him. But Billy Graham was probably the smartest fighter that I ever fought.
Carmen Basilio, let's get updated on your life here. After boxing, what did you go into?
Well, I was a phys ed teacher at Lemoyne College for 20 years, and during that time I worked part-time and in the summer times for the Genesee Brewing Company in public relations. So I've had an interesting...
How about your family?
My family, I had 2 adopted boys. They're both married now, and unfortunately I got divorced and remarried again. So that's my family.
Well, you're enjoying life in Rochester today.
Oh yes, I'm married to a very nice lady, and I'm retired from the Genesee Brewery now, and that just happened in December. So I think I'm going to try to enjoy life now.
Are you making a few personal appearances like you have in Jamestown?
Yes, a few, not too many. I'm trying to get away from traveling a lot, and but
Would you recommend the game to a young man today who feels he has the talent to be a boxer? Would you recommend him going into the world of boxing?
well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of money to be made for some young kid that's not educated and not in school. I would recommend a kid, if I thought he had the ability, was willing to work hard to stay in shape and keep his nose clean, and he was interested, willing to pay the price. What I mean by paying the price is doing the work that's required and living the clean life that it is, and be a good person outside the ring. So if he had those qualifications, I say yes, go ahead and do it. If not, forget about it, because you're not going to pay the price. You're going to do nothing but get licked.
Well, what a nice piece of advice, Russ.
That sure is good advice. Now, I just wonder, would you share with us that's got to be a thrilling moment that championship fight is over, and when the announcement is made that you're the champion of the world, what goes through your mind at that moment?
I don't know. I won the welterweight championship in Syracuse, and I said to myself, well, at that time I had a lot of skeptics that didn't think I stood a chance, and I said, well, I got even with those guys. I taught them a lesson. But when I fought Sugar Ray Robinson in Yankee Stadium, this was a boyhood dream, to fight in Yankee Stadium and win a world championship. And I was always a Yankee fan, so I argued to get the Yankee dressing room. So I got the dressing room, and Casey Stengel, the Yankees were off that day, so Casey Stengel was down there, and all of my heroes, Mickey Mantle, Irv Noren, Bob Scherf, and Billy Martin, and all of them, they all came down to wish me luck and everything, because they were all buddies of mine. And when I walked out of the dressing room, into the dugout, out to the infield, because the ring was right over the pitcher's mound. And I looked up and I saw that crowd, and I almost started to cry. I said, my boyhood dreams come true, to fight in Yankee Stadium for a world championship. And then I won it. That made more of my boyhood dream come true.
What did your mother and father do all this time, Carmen? Were they nervous parents watching you fight? And did Mom close her eyes when she saw her son get hit?
My father loved it. He was in his glory. They tell me that my sisters and brother-in-laws used to sit next to him at the fight. But he'd never say a word. He'd watch the fight, and at the end of every round, all he would say is, I don't know. That's what he would say. Now, my mother, she went to my fight when I won the welterweight championship. It's probably one of the very few fights she went to. And one night, I'm fighting in Toledo, Ohio, I think, on television, a Saturday night fight. And my father and mother are watching it on TV at home. And my mother got so excited that she fainted. And my father got mad at her. He got mad at her. And because he got all excited too, down deep. So when she fainted like that, he figured this interfered with his watching me. See? So,
but the hardworking parents, right, Carmen?
Oh yeah, my mother worked from daylight to dawn every day. She had 10 kids to take care of, and that little lady was only 4'10", and She worked from morning to night all the time.
They had the greatest fights of all times, didn't they?
Yeah.
Just raising 10 children.
Hey, she'd give me a couple of lickings too.
Well, I'll tell you what, Carmen Basilio, we'll let your mother win this particular round, okay?
She can win anytime. That's all right.
But we thank you for this special moment to be with you and share your glorious days with us.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here and to be with you people, and I enjoy myself too. Thank you.
Russ, another special moment for us.
Yes, I can feel the rush that he had walking out into Yankee Stadium. I have that rush being here today.
Thank you very much. Our special guest, Carmen Basilio. Doc, we brought back some memories for you.
And how? Well, I watched him when I watched Sugar Ray fighting him, and Sugar Ray was trying every way to get this guy out of there, but he couldn't do it. And I thought that was wonderful, because most of the people thought that Sugar Ray would beat him. But,
Well, I think, wait a minute, if I may, for this final thought, I think Doc Servoss and Carmen Basilio's mother and father have something in common. 10 children. He had 10 also.
Well, my mother really had 12. The first two passed away, but
I knew he'd outdo you, Doc. I went some way.
one died the same day, and the boy, they had a boy, the first boy, but he had spinal meningitis, and after he only lived about 3 months.
Well, Carmen, let me say this. You deserve the kind of life you would want, the joy of being home with your wife, the fans still wanting to congratulate you on sharing those great moments with us in the world of sports.
I did what I wanted to do. And there aren't many people who can say that their boyhood dreams come true. My boyhood dream was to be a professional fighter, be a world champion, and fight in Yankee Stadium. And I can remember in 4th grade, this teacher was asking all of us kids what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I stood up and I said, I'm going to be a boxer and be a champion of the world. She said, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. Now, I often wondered, because she was still around when I was boxing, I often wonder what she thought, if she ever thought about that.
Yeah.
Of course, years go by and a lot of children go through it.
I'll say this, Carmen, I don't know her, but I bet she just stood there proud as heck that she had you as a student one day.
Well,
Carmen Basilio,
I
thanks,
should have went and visited her.
thanks a million for being with us.
It was my pleasure, and enjoy being here with you.
What an opportunity here on the Times of Your Life with a former welterweight and middleweight champion of the world, Carmen Basilio.
An extraordinary afternoon where radio legend Jim Roselle meets boxing legend Carmen Basilio. Carmen Basilio was elected to the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1969. What a delight.